everybody. We are getting started on our second week of interviews with Higher Education Commissioner, Dr. Shannon Gilkey. We're talking about different topics every week, and hopefully they will be important to you and you will learn something today. Hi, Commissioner.
Good morning, and thanks everyone for joining us again, and thanks Ashley for taking the time.
Awesome. So let's get started. I know we're talking about a number of topics today. Let's talk about enrollment first and incentives and how these colleges can expect to go about the next year and a half while folks are wondering, do I take time off? All that. How do we boost our enrollment?
Absolutely. Well, I think it's important to remember that the Rhode Island economy, the Rhode Island workforce needs Rhode Islanders with credentials, with higher education training and degrees. And it's the quickest way for Rhode Islanders to get into a livable wage in many cases. So our colleges are having, and our state has some incentives to help you get there. The first thing is the Rhode Island Promise. For those that don't know about the Rhode Island Promise, it's an incentive by the state funding for Rhode Islanders to get their first 2 years of college taken care of at our community college. And we really want to support Governor McKee and Senate President Ruggiero and Speaker Sakarchi for their continued support for the continued funding of that program. It's an exciting incentive to get Rhode Islanders into college. And I would encourage everyone to fill out your FAFSA. That's a free financial aid application in order to see if those resources are available to you. But for Rhode Islanders, they are at the community college with Rhode Island Promise.
Mm-hmm. And in your experience, how often have you seen these similar situations like Rhode Island Promise around the country?
Yeah, so the College Promise movement across the country is picking up. There was a few states several years ago that started. Our new First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden, has talked a lot about free community college in this country, but affordability is obviously a path to enrollment, and that movement is picking up steam around the country. But there's also other things that colleges can do, and the University of Rhode Island actually is doing some flexibility of policies to really help the Rhode Islanders streamline their enrollment, such as they're having more flexible deadlines, they're offering more one-on-one college planning or navigation, and they're also making the SAT and ACT optional, which is a new policy change to help ease that enrollment. So there's the affordability stuff, but there's also just easing the enrollment process for students.
So when it comes to the affordability, I know that I saw recently that the UMass system said that they were freezing tuition, but when colleges are seeing, enrollment go down, how do they continue to freeze tuition? What do you think will happen in the coming years?
Yeah, so tuition is typically coupled with public investment of higher education. So as public investment and our state investment goes down, tuition sometimes goes up. And that varies college by college, which makes things like the College Promise or Rhode Island Promise a really attractive option for affordability. For generally speaking, though, if Rhode Islanders stay in the state of Rhode Island and attend one of our public institutions, that's typically the more affordable option for many Rhode Islanders. There are cases that going out of state may be a little bit more affordable, but what I would do for Rhode Islanders if I were my son or daughter, or if I was wanting to go back to school, is to check institution by institution. There's a great resource with our Rhode Island Student Loan Authority called the College Planner that helps our Rhode Islanders navigate that process, because it's going to vary institution by institution.
And one thing, I know we got a little bit of your background in the last one, but just in case some folks missed it, I wanted to just chat about, how you got here, and then also people, if you can talk about your duties moving forward in Rhode Island.
Absolutely. So I'm the commissioner for post-secondary education. Our office is charged with really overseeing and moving Rhode Island's higher education system forward in the state on behalf of Rhode Islanders. We work for Rhode Islanders out there. And so we want to make sure that if financial aid is a barrier, we want to make sure that there are resources out there for students to access and navigate that process, as an example, to help with college affordability or for things like college readiness.
So when it comes to financial debt, I know a lot of people may be first-generation students. Even if they're not first-generation students, it can be an overwhelming process, whether you are fresh out of high school, whether you're 2 decades out and paused your education. What should folks know when it comes to, once you file the FAFSA, once you have different loans on the table?
So the first way to combat student loan debt is to look at for affordability. You look at financial aid. And for a lot of first generation college students, you think that you have to automatically take out student loans to go to college. But if I were you, and if it was my son or daughter, I would advise you to really look at financial aid. You want to make that price as affordable as possible so you prevent from taking out loans. Last year, Rhode Islanders left almost $6 million of financial aid on the table that was available. They just wasn't taken advantage of. So I would encourage you out there to really get to know your free financial aid application, to go to the College Planner resource before applying and look at the institution where you would want to go to see what the cost of that college. And we want to get it down as low as possible to prevent you from taking out any student loan debt. For those out there that are adults and are working, ask your employer. A lot of employers out there are offering incentives for going back to college, and they may pay for it as part of your compensation package. So again, get the price down as much as possible. We're working with our legislator and our governor to talk about more investments into higher education to lower the cost for Rhode Islanders. But if you have to take out loans, let's make sure that the program you choose has a really high return on that investment so you get a job and that you can pay those and make those payments, but get that price down by taking advantage of federal or state aid as much as possible.
And I know people wonder about that, the bucket of money that could help them shape their future. If there's $6 million left, what happens to that money? Where does that go?
Yeah, it just gets re-put into the system. So we want to take advantage of it every year. So any student from all socioeconomic backgrounds, make sure you check out a College Planner tool at your local institution that you're interested in, or the one for the state that's found at our Rhode Island Student Loan Authority. But we want to start there first and try to get the price tag down as much as possible. Taking out debt should be a last resort to get that credential that gets you that job that you need.
So I wanted to move on to some comments by Dr. Dooley, former president of URI. And I just want to establish first, though, that URI has its own oversight board. However, the RIOPC does work closely with URI, correct?
Absolutely. It's important that all of our institutions, public and private, work together to make sure that the majority, if not all, Rhode Islanders have some form of credentials. So we're all part of the same team.
Yeah, so Dr. Dooley on 10 News Conference this past week told our Gene Valicenti that, he's concerned about students coming from K to 12 not being prepared to take classes. He said, such as math, they're not ready, they're falling behind. The Governor McKee, actually echoed those comments as well. So with that issue, what do we do to prepare these students so they're not spending their first year essentially catching up or even, not doing well?
Yeah, it's a great question, Ashley. And I'll tell you, college readiness, typically in mathematics and English and language arts, is something that every state in the country is trying to get better at doing. I'll tell you that I agree with President Dooley in the sense that we need to continue to work on college readiness issues. Just like affordability, being prepared academically will help or hurt a student or prevent a student from completing their degree. And starting a degree and not completing, particularly if you have to take out those loans to pay for it, could be a gatekeeper from really being successful in the economy. So we need you to be able to afford to go to college, but also complete that degree from that academic perspective in order to get that job or that career that you seek. I'll tell you, Commissioner Infante Green and I agree that college readiness is an education problem, an issue that we want to address from K-12 and the higher ed perspective. And so we're really joined at addressing that for Rhode Islanders. On a personal note, I struggled with mathematics when I transitioned to college, and there's a lot of resources that our institutions have to support you once you arrive. But you can be successful. So if Rhode Islanders are out there and you may be apprehensive to go back to school, or if you just graduated high school that you might feel a little ill prepared, please give it a try. Call the institution, talk to your local high school to find resources, because we want to make sure that you're successful in education to get that career.
So I'm going to tell some folks in ninth grade, 10th grade, please tune in, because I want to talk about just touch on dual enrollment and really let folks know that while you're in high school, maybe you're not thinking of what my first semester or second semester of college will be like, but if they're really going to start buckling down and thinking about that, that means, they could knock out some gen eds or get some credits, and that could get them to, starting their major even sooner or taking some classes that really interest them. Can you kind of paint the picture for folks who might think, I don't want to do that, I don't need to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great dual and concurrent enrollment are great strategies for addressing college readiness or just that transition from high school into higher ed. And what it does, it allows you to be a student in high school as well as a student at CCRI or RIC or another institution and get credit at the same time. So imagine taking that mathematics course and earning credit for college while you're sitting in that high school as a junior or a senior. I was a high school teacher once, and I taught a dual credit class as a high school teacher in computer science. So it can also be in other topic areas, not just math and English and language arts. If you can complete more college credits while you're in high school, you're that much closer. And honestly, it's gonna help with that affordability because you're not going to pay for that once you get into college. So it's a twofold win. And we want to encourage students, parents out there that take advantage of those opportunities while they're in high school.
Mm-hmm. And for those parents that are watching this right now, or even ambitious students as well, you know, you never want to put too much on your plate, but it is possible. And I've known plenty of people that can, you know, be the ones that graduate early, that don't pay for that last semester. Are you seeing that often? How possible is it? I don't want to tell these kids to get, overwhelm themselves, but I know that will play a part in affordability.
Yep. So as a parent of a student who's going to be in that age group one day, or if I was still a teacher, number one, make sure you're ready. You're academically prepared to go to college and be successful. If you can do that while you're in high school, step one, that's what I would encourage. And then anything additional you can do to take advantage of that sophomore or junior or senior year to get more credits, absolutely. I would encourage that acceleration. We want people to be ready to go to college and then accelerate. So I would not overwhelm our students with more than they can handle. I think that's a great point and piece of advice. But the more you can accomplish while in high school, the possible. There are cases out there where students get, most of their 2-year degree completed while they're in high school, which is exciting to see. But make sure you're prepared to be successful in college first, and then take on as much as you can after that.
Mm-hmm. And can you talk to me about your relationship with RIDE? The different conversations that you have. Kind of what was on the table when you first met Commissioner Infante Green?
Yeah, so college readiness was on the table. This whole transition space between a high school student graduating and entering college and being successful in completing was one of the first things that we talked about. I think of it as a baton race, and the baton is handed off from K-12 to higher ed, and we have to partner together to make sure that handoff is seamless. So we talked a lot about college readiness. We talked a lot about having our joint agenda to do that together, community by community across the Rhode Island, because higher ed's involvement in that attainment agenda for local communities is also a partnership we want to have with local high schools.
Mm-hmm. And I wanted to get your thoughts on, since this is a big topic, the data-driven moves within the state, within the country. I know right now a lot of students in K-12 are starting to take standardized tests. I know that the state says, this is how we figure out where students are. I wanted to get your thoughts on that and how that prepares students.
Sure. So I just mentioned the University of Rhode Island actually has waived for their enrollment. They've waived the ACT and SAT as an enrollment option. So there's some flexibility with that standardized test. Standardized tests gives us a good picture about academic readiness, but there's also other things like GPA, like community service and other extracurricular activities that tell us a holistic evaluation on that, the student's ability to successfully not just transition, but complete that higher education credential. And that's what we ultimately want for all of our Rhode Islanders out there. So that holistic approach, there's really good data about they call it multiple measures as an education jargon about this issue. And there's some really good evidence that shows that works just as well.
So moving on to some questions that I received, one really interesting one and a topic that I'd like to talk about is the different criteria for actually getting into college, how you've seen it evolve over the decades. Now that we're in a pandemic, maybe some colleges are still doing virtual interviews. Some students might think, my resume XYZ isn't up to where I wanted it to be because school was closed and we're just figuring this out. What can students expect when it comes to admissions?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. Our public institutions and private institutions have their different admissions criteria. So I think going back to those resources like the college planner at the Rhode Island Student Loan Authority, I think that will be a help starting place. But then really getting to know an admissions officer, an enrollment officer at the institution, and a career counselor at the institution to make sure that you're enrolling into that higher education experience, but thinking about what that transition experience is. As far as admission requirements, those are going to vary institution by institution, so you want to make sure you follow those. But getting as good as grades as possible while you're in high school, or if you're wanting to return an adult to that college, understanding where you last left off from that previous education experience, you're going to want to be able to inventory those. A resume is always a really good thing to have, and also if there's a standardized test that you've taken, having those taken would be the things I would start with as a high school student, or maybe rethinking about getting that information if you're returning back to college.
All right, great. Well, I think that's all I had for today. If there's anything you want to add as a kind of a last message to any folks watching.
Yes, thank you, Ashley. And I really appreciate the time. Just parting message, it's not too late, never too late to go back to college or go to an institution. For those that are out there that may be dislocated because of the pandemic, contact an institution and figure out what programs might work for you. And for high school seniors that maybe think they've missed a deadline or it might be too late, it's a great time to call an institution or go to Rhode Island Reconnect, because you haven't missed your opportunity, and we need you in the system. We need you to have that high quality credential so we can be helping our economy move forward and reopen back up. So it's a good time to go to college.
All right. Well, we will see you next week for our next conversation next Wednesday, and you guys can all check it out on our website, on YouTube, and on TV as well. All right. Thank you, Dr. Shannon Gilkey. We'll see you next week.
Thank you. Have a good day.